and welcome to our friendly meeting. And I'd like to welcome our new friends. And we do have friends, folks, believe it or not. Thank you for being here. So I'm just going to go to the other side, and I'm going to let these folks take seat in my seat. So I'll be at the other podium. Good evening, everyone. To those in the audience, my name is Eli Al-Shantir. I'm the chair of the Ottawa Police Service Board. Since the first Ottawa Police Gala was held in 2010, we raised over $645,000 for a charity in our community. Thanks to the dedicated volunteers and organizers, we have been able to support so many organizations and great work in our community. Over the years, the OPS Gala has contributed proceeds to the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa, the Ottawa Distress Center, the UVille Center, the Ottawa Mission, the Youth Service Bureau, Christie Lake Kids, the Ottawa Food Bank, and the Caring and Sharing Exchange, just to name a few. As you know, this is an event geared towards celebrating policing, but also giving back to our community. To our community co-chair, Chair Michael Sangster, I didn't see Michael here. Oh, Michael right there. Thank you, Michael. I was looking for a gentleman in a kilt, but I didn't see one. Your commitment and assistance with the gala over the past 6 years had a huge help, and we thank you for your ongoing support on behalf of all of us. With our involvement and generosity, together we can improve the lives and the future of people in Ottawa. Now I would like to turn it over to Chief Bordereau to announce this year's recipient for 2018 Gala. Chief?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Every year, as the chair mentioned, we select different charities that do amazing work in our community. And this year, we received over 38 submissions. So really fascinating to see all the different, the wide array of recipients that we are submitting for funds. They're all very deserving groups who share the values of the Ottawa Police Service and work hard to improve the lives of people living right here in our community. And it's great to see the tireless efforts taking place by so many to make our city such a great place to live. After much consideration, we selected 2 programs benefiting at-risk youth to share the proceeds of the 2018 Ottawa Police Service Gala. They are the Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group, OSEG, and the Great Canadian Theatre Company. I'd like to ask both representatives from OSEG and GCTC, Boys and Girls Club, to come here as well. And the third recipient will be the Beechwood Cemetery. So I'll ask Beechwood to come up here, as well as Mr. Sangster. So the shared proceeds will fund a new OSEG program giving at-risk youth opportunities to gain valuable work experience and expose them to new avenues for career pursuits. The money raised will provide financing for 3 years of this program. The GCTC was selected for its program for at-risk youth, referred through the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa, which empowers participants, boosts their self-confidence, and helps them thrive into adulthood. And lastly, a donation will be made to the Ottawa Police Memorial Cemetery from funds raised from the 2018 Gala. Chaque année, nous célébrons non seulement notre service de police, mais également les personnes qui travaillent sans relâche pour faire de notre ville l'un des meilleurs endroits à vivre. The gala has a lasting impact beyond the event itself through the funds we raise for local charities that deliver much needed services and programs to the most vulnerable in our community. The funds raised will help provide skills to youth and create brighter futures for themselves. The 9th Annual Ottawa Police Service Gala is taking place October 27th at the Shaw Centre, and tickets will be available soon through purchase on our Ottawa Police website. So now I'd like to invite Michael Sangster, our community co-chair, to say a few words. Michael?
Thank you, Chief. I'll be very brief. The Chief and Eli, thank you for your kind words. Have summed up many of the things that are going to be happening at this year's gala and the benefactors from the gala. Many of the sponsors that have made it such a success are here with us today. Have joined us for a little reception before, so I would be remiss if I didn't thank them. Without them, we wouldn't be able to make the financial contribution to the charities that we do. So for a moment, if we just thank those kind companies and companies that have helped us out. Before we take a bit of a celebratory photo with the new chair of the Ottawa Police Board and his two vice chairs, I don't think they've determined which one is the chair yet. I think it's the 67s because they've been here the longest. But I want to just say quickly why I'm personally involved. The gala, for those of you who have been there who haven't had the chance, I encourage you to please come out. I'm very excited to see we're supporting the Beechwood Cemetery this year, because the gala is a moment in time where the city can stop and thank the Ottawa Police for the many acts of bravery, and I think even more importantly, the many acts of kindness that happen every day on the streets of our city that we don't notice. In our life today, we focus on the social media, the little hit, the negative story, and it's the little things that happen every day that I hear about from some of the charities like the Boys and Girls Club that I think are so impactful as to why we have this evening. So that's why I'm involved, and I encourage you all to please come out and help us raise a few more dollars this year. Thank you.
There's no room around it.
Good evening, everyone. And we'd like to call our meeting to order. And I see half the audience left us, so I thought all along they were coming to hear us at the board meeting. But I'm glad they came in for the special event. We'd like to go through our consent agenda. We start with the confirmation of agenda that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirmed the agenda of the 25th June 2018. On the item? Okay, thank you. Confirmation of minute of May 28th meeting that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirmed the meeting of the 28th May 2018. On the item? Carried. Carried, thank you. Declaration of interest. Committee meeting reports from the committee chairs in minute, and I see my colleague Carl Nicholson unfortunately cannot be here tonight in our meeting, but Chair Hubley of the Finance and Audit Committee would probably want to say a few words on the committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance and Audit Committee met on June 4th. We received an update presentation on the modernization roadmap and had discussions around the work plan for Bundle 2. Based on the feedback from the board and city staff, we have revised the next bundle for implementation, and that revised bundle and work plan is before the board tonight for approval. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So on the item that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information from the committee chair. It's received, thank you. Inquiries. Okay, so item of business, we have the item number 1, the chief verbal report, so if we can hold item number 1. Item number 2, we do have a presentation, is a diversity audit, and we'll hold this item 2. Item number 3 is the federal funding to reduce guns in crime and criminal gang activity. That's a report on the front of us, but we'll go back to City Council after tonight's meeting. And I see my colleague, Councillor Dean, here to speak on item 3, but we'll hold item 3 for now. Item number 4 is the report the chair of the Finance and Audit Committee spoke about, is modernization of roadmap for the roadmap update and bundle 2A request. So we do have we'll hold item 1, we have some question, and staff is going to show us the new changes they have managed to make. Item number 5, and I was asked to speak slowly so Member Smallwood have something to say about this. So item number 5 is the merit CV evaluation that the Ottawa Police Service Board authorized the award of sole source contract of Social Planning Council of Ottawa proposed for evaluation of 3 years merit CV evaluation project in the amount of $142,000 as laid out in this report to be funded from the Public Safety Canada. Member Smallwood.
Yeah, I thought this was a really important, I know that it's something I think we all agree with, but I just thought it was important to point out that this actually came as a result of a hub proposal that was I think originally started in Prince Albert, and before that the Prince Albert hub model came from Scotland, and it was put together by a person called Karen McCloskey. And I thought it's really interesting just because tonight we'll be looking at hiring 10 additional officers, which is downstream. But I think the chief has made it very clear, as have others, that hiring more police isn't the sole answer to the situations that the public sees in terms of what happens in our streets. That upstream is really important. And this merit table is a really critical part of that upstream thing, and we don't, I think, give enough attention to that. So I think this is really important. But I also just wondered, given the Canadian Association of Police Governance I noticed in the report it said that there would be some during the course of this evaluation, there would be some discussion with the people who run the hub model in Prince Albert. But I wondered if they would take advantage of the fact that Karen McCloskey, who is the originator from Scotland of this, what became the hub model, will be in, she's coming to the conference in August. And I think there'd be an opportunity to speak to her. CAPG is paying for her to come to Canada. It may be possible to tag an extra day on and have her speak to us and look at how, because our model is based originally on her model, what she thinks of it. At a very minimum, it would be great if some of the people who are doing the research could come and listen to what she has to say in August. So I raised that. I don't know if there's any, I'd be happy to follow up with the CAPG to see if we could make that happen in terms of meeting with her.
So yeah, Mr. Chair, that would be a great opportunity for us. We'll make sure that the Social Planning Council of Ottawa knows that she's coming and takes the opportunity to reach out. But from a learning perspective for us, I think that would be a great opportunity, and we'd appreciate if you'd set that up.
Okay, so on the item, received, thank you. Item, oh no, we have to approve that. On the item, can we approve item number 5? Carried. Okay, thank you. Item number 6 is the Ottawa Police Service Annual Report, Chief's report, and that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report on an online version for information, and I think was delivered to us online before, right? So on item 6, received, thank you. Item number 7 is a professional standard section 2017 annual report that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. The item received. Item number 8, report on SIU investigation, February 2016. That the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Received, thank you. Item number 9, also report on SIU investigation, February 2017, that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Received, thank you. Item number 10 is outstanding board inquiries in motion, June 2018. Report from the executive directors that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Received, thank you. Item number 11, letters of commendation that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Thank you. So now we go to I know the Chief's verbal report will go first, but if we can, before we do the diversity audit, if we can connect immediately to item number 3, because I think the Chief's verbal report on item number 3 is going to probably go hand in hand. So we'll hold item number 2 for after 3, if it's okay with my colleague. Okay. So I'll turn it now to the Chief for verbal report. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first want to begin this evening by mentioning the new timelines for cannabis legislation or legalization. The federal government announced last week that the official date when cannabis will become legal is set to take in force on October 17th. That announcement was a major milestone, but there's still a lot of work to do in developing and finalizing regulations, both at the federal and the provincial level. Public education and awareness will be vital. Government needs to ensure all Canadians understand the new rules. And a key priority for the police is the issue of impaired driving. We expect to see an increase as a result of experiences in other jurisdictions, and we've been working very hard to ensure that our officers have the training to identify impaired drivers by drug. As a police service, we are working hard to ensure that all our officers are fully prepared to deal with safety issues surrounding this new legislation. We currently have 16 officers trained as drug recognition experts and another 261 officers trained on our standardized field sobriety testing. Another 10 will be trained as drug recognition experts this fall. Unfortunately, the training is currently only available through the United States and the RCMP. We will be educating our members on the practical implications of the new law in regards to policing. This means learning about penalties and offenses under the new legislation. We're also part of a citywide integrated cannabis steering committee and a working group. While this new law brings with it many unknowns, our service is taking a pragmatic approach to dealing with whatever emerges after the implementation of the legislation. As we all know, we will be celebrating Canada Day in less than a week. Our service has been coordinating with our policing, security, federal and municipal partners to prepare for the safety of all who attend this event. We undertake these preparations with an understanding of the threats that exist in our world and in our community. I want to thank the planning teams and all the members who have been actively engaged in the work so far. It's a difficult balance ensuring public safety and security measures don't impact the ability of the public to enjoy this holiday. This year, the Ottawa Police Service is again in charge of security off the hill and throughout Ottawa. The lineups are managed by Heritage Canada and Parliamentary Protective Services, and I know that a lot of work has gone into learning lessons from last year's experiences. Last year's Canada 150 events were a great primer for enhancing safety measures during popular events, and our special events team was recognized for its effort in dealing with the complex logistics for deployment during Canada's birthday year with the 2018 City Manager's Award of Distinction for Collaboration and Relationship Building. It's a well-deserved award, and the Ottawa Police Service is proud to be a partner in the C team. Mr. Chair, I've talked about new implementation of some software called Health IM. Just this past week, our frontline officers were provided a new tool when responding to calls for people in mental health crisis. The new Health IM software system allows an officer the ability to quickly assess whether a patient is an acute risk and seamlessly send that report to a nearby hospital. It will also assist us in tracking and reducing wait times at hospitals. This tool will help us to provide appropriate assistance to those in mental crisis. We expect it will reduce our apprehension rates when it comes to interacting with those who have mental health issues. Officers have already begun using the tool, and we expect to have updates on how the new software is helping us help those most vulnerable in our city. And having said that, helping people in mental health crisis puts our communication skills of our members to the test. One evening earlier this month, our officers responded to a report of a suicidal young man on the Alexandria Bridge. Our officers responded and began speaking to the man. Ottawa Fire managed to get a boat beneath him in the water in case he did jump. By working together, they managed to talk the man off the bridge and get him to a hospital. I want to thank all those involved. It is calls like these that often go unnoticed but have a major impact on the people in our community. Our traffic services team was also out in full force for our Mega Ride initiative on June 15th, looking to get impaired drivers off our roads and enhance the safety of all road users in our city. 22 officers screened 1,520 vehicles, which resulted in 1 impaired driving charge and 2 3-day suspensions. Additionally, they issued 22 provincial offense notices, helped by the automated license plate recognition device. I also want to focus on a few calls and investigations from the last few days that detail the prevalence of guns in our community and the higher risk work that our members do each and every day. In early June, our K-9 unit assisted robbery investigators in locating a suspect after he fled on foot from a 3-car crash. The suspect was quickly located, and a loaded 9mm handgun and stolen property were recovered from the vehicle. The firearm was later traced to a home in Michigan, where it had been reported stolen. On June 13th, a drug unit investigation at a motel, which was the subject of a great amount of public complaints, resulted in the arrest of a man for possession of crack cocaine. A body armor vest was also seized during the warrant. On June 16th, Frontline and DART officers arrested a man during a traffic stop after discovering a large quantity of marijuana and a loaded handgun. On June 21st, our drug unit seized 4 handguns with extended magazines and hollow point ammunition. 6 people arrested, and a large quantity of narcotics and cash was also seized. And finally, this past weekend, our drug unit conducted a search as part of a joint forces investigation with UOPP. Our officers seized drugs, stolen property, and an assault rifle and a handgun. Sadly, it's become more and more common for our officers to find handguns and illegal weapons during our investigations. The influx of guns is being seen in many communities in Canada. It's a reality that puts our officers and the public at risk. Members from across our service continue to focus on gun violence suppression in our community. We are seeing results, but we need to ensure that that effort can be sustained long-term. That's why the report on the agenda regarding our 10 new officers directed at our guns and gangs efforts is so important. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chief. And a question to the Chief on the Chief's verbal report. Member Blaustein.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given the increased numbers in violent crime in the city, which have been very powerful numbers for everyone to see, I was wondering if it's possible at a future board meeting for you to show us how the officers are dispersed within the city. That bring a screenshot perhaps from the operations center, a couple of screenshots to show how we've got sufficient vehicles on the road, and not only vehicles on the road, but we have officers available, or are the officers all occupied and we're having issues and concerns with getting sufficient response to prevention situations. Is that possible to bring that to the board? It would be, I think, a very useful visual for us to see the whole city and where some of the concentrations of officers and vehicles may be.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, it would be inappropriate for us to provide that information in a public setting. We guard very closely our deployment model, where the officers are, the numbers that are out there for operational security reasons, and it would be inappropriate in an open public forum. We've never released that type of information publicly. Even when we speak to Canada Today, we don't speak to the numbers that we have deployed out there.
Jay?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief, for the report. As we get closer to, it being legal, is there any movement, and I don't know if this requires more provincial changes, to be able to close down a lot of these illegal pot shops? Is there a strategy, a plan in place for that as we get closer to the legalization?
That's a good question.
Mr. Chair, subject to the distribution network model being changed, the plan under the previous government was that they were going to create a region and provincial-wide teams that we would contribute to. They would be led by the Criminal Intelligence Service of Ontario, and they would have the responsibility to work closely with the municipalities to ensure that those illegal stores would be closed and remain closed. So there is a strategy in place. We continue in the meantime to do the work that we do on balancing our different pressures that we have with drug activity. But as I said, the plan is by the province to have a provincial-wide team separated in different regions across Ontario to deal with those illegal stores.
Great. And just as a follow-up, Mr. Chair, if it's okay, now that we do have a new provincial government in place, what's the method to continue those discussions with the new government as they come in? Is there a strategy around that? I just want to ensure that if there's been so much thought put into closing these places down quicker, which is a problem, we all know that, how prepared they'll be for that. Is there discussions between your group and the province, or is this something that has to be led by every municipality?
Well, I'm not sure if the Chief would like to add some more, but we did have a preliminary discussion with the new government. As you know, the new government will take place on June 29. So they're gathering some information. Obviously, they're fully aware of what's happening here, and some municipality cannot be soon enough to shut those illegal shops out of their community. So obviously, that will be something the new government will take on, as we were promised once they take office.
Okay, so to ensure the dialogue continues, that's my concern. Should it be through the police board, or is this something I should put through council to be able to ensure that it's still on front burner?
I think the chiefs of police and the Ontario Association of Police Board both have concern about this, and they share it with the new government, but I'm not sure if the chiefs have any additional info.
Yeah, from an operational perspective, the OECP, the chiefs are connected with CISO that will be managing these. I think what we're waiting for is the announcement from new government to see if they will maintain the previous approach, or if they're shifting their, from a public policy perspective, they're shifting their approach. So once we hear that, we'll be able to be better equipped to making the right decisions.
And that's my concern as well, so I'm hoping maybe next police board meeting we'll have a follow-up on that, like we always do.
Or we can bring you some update. Hopefully we'll have some update to share with you.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Member Turner. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As my colleague talks about closing buildings down, I recall earlier discussion we had on this. One of the things that had come out of meeting with the OPP was that new legislation includes that we have to have a warehouse facility or some sort of storage facility set up to hold any marijuana that's seized in police operations. Is there any progress on that, knowing where we're going with that? Because that's obviously going to be a budget pressure for you this year, and so for the board's purposes, I'd like to know.
Mr. Chair, that piece of in the legislation remains there. We have two options. One is that in order for us to maintain the evidence that we seize, the plants, we have to ensure that we have the facilities to maintain it in the state, so that in the event of a collapse of the courts, that that product gets returned. Option B is that we provide them the monetary value of the plants at the conclusion of the court case. So either way, it's a significant budget impact on the police service and across the country with respect to having to return either the value or maintaining the plants. Certainly very disappointing from our perspective that element remained as the final piece of legislation because it is a very much of an extra burden on our taxpayers.
I know when we discussed this and pending legislation, I think you gave an estimate that you thought it would be either $6 or $8 million impact for our force. If this is the case that you could possibly just pay off the seized marijuana, do you need to revise those numbers? I would assume you'd want at least another $1 million to cover the potential of paying out these costs.
There's certainly a budget impact, and it wasn't part of the initial estimates, and it depends on each municipality. The big unknown is how much are we going to be seizing under this new legislation, and the fact that homeowners can also now have the four plants as a maximum in their residences. So if we are responding to calls for service where we're finding tenants or residences that have more plants than the four, those are the types of incidents that we have to maintain. So we're going to be working with our provincial colleagues to see exactly if we can further refine that type of number, but there's no question that it would have an impact on our budget with respect to moving forward and having to reimburse individuals.
So are you expecting, last question on that, are you expecting to revise the budget numbers then at some point this fall, or do we have any indication when you'll be ready to do that?
I think as part of the 2019 budget process, you're going to see some recommendations and proposals put forth with respect to ensuring that we can minimize the impact from a financial perspective.
Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Hubley. Any other questions to the Chief? Chief, on behalf of my colleague, the board member, especially the one who managed to attend the PDC with the Director General, I want to say thank you to the staff who spent the time show us part of their training on a de-escalation. I think we should go there, I think, at least once a year to get a refreshing to see how great job these folks do on behalf of us there. I have to tell you, we left there very impressed with the professionalism and also the quality of the training of the de-escalation. So even the Director General, she said she learned something new that day as well. So there you go. So thank you very much. And if you can pass on our gratitude to the staff at the PDC, we'll really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm very proud of the work that they do, and they do great work around de-escalation, and I'll pass on your comments.
Okay. On the Chief's Available Report received. Okay, so now item number 3, as I promised, we'll go to it first because we have Councillor Dean with us here, and I see Councillor Eglai joining us, and I'm not sure somebody else, but thank you both, Councillor, for your support and being here. Just to put a little bit this item in context, so that after the summit, the federal government summit, the host summit on criminal guns and gang, I believe was in March this year. The chief, the mayor, myself, and the executive director, we attended the summit. That's when the federal government announced it's going to be a $327 million, 0.6 over the next 5 years, an additional $100 million annual to help support Verify initiative to reduce guns, crime, and criminal gang activities. And was focused from the minister that they about large urban municipality who's seen increase in gun violence: Toronto, Ottawa, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver. So we follow up with on behalf of the Canadian Association of Government. I follow up meeting with the minister, and at that time Ontario was going through election, and we didn't receive any commitment from the federal government how the money is going to be delivered or managed. So in discussion with the chief made a proposal to us to ask to advance funding for 10 police officers can start as early as October, and those 10 police officers will be direct entry officers, so they're not attend recruits, so they can start working within a few weeks after they've been hired. So I took the chief's request and went to the mayor, and obviously the mayor put a notice of motion last council meeting, and that motion will be debated on Wednesday after this board approve or not approve this item. But I'm hoping I can count on your support. I had discussion with some of my colleagues on council, and a lot of them in support of this initiative. So I'm not sure, Chief, if you'd like to add some more, or we'll go directly to Councillor Dean, who's joining us for some question.
Mr. Chair, I think you've covered provided a good overview, so go to the questions.
Councillor Dean, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Police Services Board for including me in your discussion this afternoon. I'm here because I'm very concerned about what's happening in our community, in particular Ward 10, the ward that I represent, but of course the increase in street violence across the city is very concerning to me and to the people that I represent. And I can tell you, just last week we had a shooting of a 16-year-old, and it seems to be increasingly frequent in the south end of the city and in the constituency that I represent. And there are very few places that I go right now that I'm not hearing concern from the businesses and from the residents about the increase in street violence. You will probably all recall that I voted against the police services budget for 2018. It wasn't because I thought you were asking for too much, it was because I thought you weren't asking for enough. And I want to make sure that this police service is properly resourced in order to be able to address the emerging concerns that we're seeing in the community and the increase in violent crime and gun violence in the neighborhood. So I'm here first off to encourage you to agree to the increase in the 10 direct entry officers into the force. I think as soon as we can get them, we should have them. But I do have some questions. I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank Deputy Chief Bell, who's been spending some time with me lately and has been, I think, extremely helpful in answering some of my concerns, but also in being present in the South End and meeting with some of the businesses and laying their concerns that are very real. So I guess when I get to questions, I'm going to reflect on some of the things I've been hearing from my constituents. And one is, so what exactly will the 10 do? What makes 10 the right number? Is it enough? Will you be able to deploy them in such a way to make a dent or a difference in what we're seeing happening in the community?
Chief. Mr. Chair, for past year and a half, 2 years, we have been temporarily reassigning officers to supplement the core number in our guns and gangs unit and our DART team. The 10 officers will be assigned directly, and those new positions will be permanent additions to our guns and gangs unit and our DART team. We have seen a tremendous amount of success with the number of officers dedicated to DART and our guns and gangs unit. So those 10 officers, 5 will be going to the investigative unit to help conduct the investigations, and the other 5 will be going to the DART team. So it will help provide some sustainability into conducting those investigations. In addition, it's going to help the DART team refocus on their mandate of being out in the community, building those positive relationships with residents, with members that are associated with gangs, in order to link them up again to the other parts of our gang strategy around the proactive stuff that we're doing with John Howard and the other community organizations. The success that we've seen has also been as a result of an organization-wide effort. Patrol officers are out there, our drug unit, our surveillance teams are all focused on dealing with this issue in a concerted effort.
So why 10? Is 10 enough?
We feel that is a number that is going to adequately support our guns and gangs unit from an investigative perspective, and the DART team. That's where that number we've seen a lot of success in achieving, helping them achieve from the caseload, the workload perspective, doing the investigations, and the number of officers that we need out there doing the actual functions of DART.
As much as we have seen an increase in street violence across the city, and as you note, probably across all of North America, but it's when it hits home, when it's in your community, that you become most concerned. And as much as we've seen an escalation across the board, we're also seeing pockets where there is more gun violence and activity than we've seen in the past, and one of them just happens to be in the constituency that I represent. So what I hear from community members are questions about we have to be malleable enough as a police service to change directions if changing directions makes sense. So is it time to either bring on more community police officers that would know a little bit more about the community? And that's not to say anything bad about our community police officers. I'm very happy with our community police officers. I just think they might be spread a little thin. I've had several people ask about the decision that was made to end the community police centers, and would we not benefit perhaps from bringing back a community police center centered in that area where there is an escalation in violent crime?
Mr. Chair, it's been our approach that bricks and mortar are not the solution to dealing with community issues. It's more around the people, and I'd rather have police officers and community police officers out in the community, build those relationships and working very hard. the police service over the past 3 years have added 75 officers. We're completing that plan now, and we're actually plan going forward is to add another 90 officers, 30 over each year, to continue to supplement the number of officers that are out there doing frontline police work, working with their community partners and working at solutions. So we think we've been growing the police service responsibly, and it's the increase in violence is again a phenomenon that we're seeing across the country in large urban centers. So from an enforcement and suppression perspective, we're doing what we can. But I think the focus also needs to be, again, on the proactive, the preventative measures that we're doing with our community partners to continue working upstream, like the Vice Chair Smallwood talked about, the merit program, those types of programs, which you may not see immediate results, but you'll see the results pay off in the long run. And working again with John Howard Society, who does work with a siblings project and going into families that are involved in gang activity and helping those that may divert themselves into that type of activity.
Okay, thank you for those answers. I'm not convinced that the people in the community that see this escalation are really satisfied that we have enough resources, especially, and I agree with you that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, so we need to be doing more at the front end. And I think a lot of my constituents see those community police officers as part of that prevention piece. And so whatever we can do to add more of those kinds of officers that have a greater knowledge of those neighborhoods, I think would be useful. So thank you for allowing me to participate today and for answering my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Dean, and I hope we can count on your support in next budget when we hire 90 new police officers, and we can count on your support Wednesday for this meeting.
Oh, you definitely can count on my support for more officers, because I think this police service is relatively under-resourced compared to others in the province, and when we're seeing this kind of escalation of violent crime and gun violence, I think the time has come to make sure that we properly resource this service, so you can definitely count on me.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you very much. So to my colleague, any question on item 3? So that's... So the item 3, it reads that the Ottawa Police Service Board, 1, approve an increase that the OPS staff complement by 10 sworn officers and accompany budget pressure on the 2018 budget detailed in this report. Item 2, to direct the Executive Director to forward this report to the City Council for approval in the next council meeting, which is Wednesday on the item. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Chief, and all of you for working on this item. And now we can go back to item number 2, and we do have a presentation, so I'll turn it to Director General, or are you there? No, or the Chief, and introduce the team.
Mr. Chair, as you all know, part of our multi-year action plan to ensure that we continue to be a bias-neutral police service included a diversity audit. The board, I know, has a very keen interest in the work that we're doing, and Greybridge Malcolm was the successful proponent of the bid to do the audit, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Chris Rayom, who will take you through this presentation.
Thank you, Chief. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce you to our Greybridge Malcolm Diversity Audit Team. The team includes highly skilled members led by Dr. Denise McLean, Dr. Judy Laws, and Dr. Prince Arojo. They're here today to provide an overview of the diversity audit. They're going to work closely with the members of the Ottawa Police, our multi-year action plan team, stakeholders, and other community partners to design and deliver the audit this year. And we expect to receive the report and the recommendations by January. I'll turn it over to the team. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Thank you, Chief, and to the Chair. Thank you very much for having us here today. Our purpose really, as you can see on the introductory slide, is to give an overview of the diversity audit. Laurie, do you know if we have a French version? Okay. Okay, it's available in hard copy. And if I can figure out the technology, we'll be in good shape.
So you just use these?
I tried that. You know what? There we go. We're good. Okay. As was mentioned, we are the project team from Greybridge Malcolm. There are 3 of us on the core team. We're here today, but in total we have 6 team members involved. Greybridge Malcolm, if you're not familiar with it, is an Ottawa-based firm that specializes in diversity and inclusion, in language training, and in cross-cultural effectiveness. And as you can see, we have many years of experience. We declined to put the total number there. It was just a little too shocking. In equity, diversity, and inclusion, we've done a number of reviews across many organizations. We counted, and there's well over 40, a lot of expertise, experience specifically with public safety organizations at the municipal, regional, provincial, and federal levels. And amongst our team of 6, we have complementary skills. So we have people with specialized skills in certain areas, lots of experience in engagement and dialogue, which will be important for this undertaking, and advanced research analysis, report writing, so that at the end of the day, you get a product that's going to be useful, meaningful, pragmatic, and in fact supports future progress. We'll start with what is a diversity audit. And I'll speak to each of these points very briefly in a couple of minutes as we go through this. To begin with, it's a very comprehensive review and evaluation. And so I'll talk in a minute about the range of areas of focus that we're going to be looking at, but it is very, I don't have another word other than comprehensive, very broad-based, and looking at policies, procedures, practices, getting community input in a number of different areas. It's an assessment of the current state, so we're not looking at historically how has the police service done, or what has happened in the past, but really where are they today, the practices that are in place, how well are they meeting the needs, where are there some gaps, some opportunities for improvement. And the intent really is to identify strengths, because those are important and are critical really in terms of creating change and moving change forward. And so those should not be underestimated, as well as weaknesses and gaps, barriers, so that those things can be addressed in order to achieve diversity goals. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not about a report, it's about making change to help the Ottawa Police Service achieve the goals that they've set out. When this was set out, thank you. When the diversity audit was set out a year ago, and since then, there are 3 goals that have been identified for the audit. The first one being benchmarking. So the intent is to actually assess current state against recognized benchmarks. We're likely to use not only the global diversity and inclusion benchmarks, but others that may be more targeted toward police and security kinds of activities. And those are useful for making comparisons, but also for tracking progress in the future and making evidence-based decisions. So the intent really is to make sure that at the end of the day, the police service is equipped with the data, the evidence that they need to make reasoned and evidence-based decisions, and to be able to track and monitor progress. Exploration is about identifying the obstacles or the barriers and flagging the opportunities. Because there will be lots of things uncovered. Some of those are going to be important and worthy of attention, and that's what that exploration phase does. And there'll be a lot of consultation and getting input both internally from within the Ottawa Police Service, but also externally, that will help us to identify where are the priorities, where are the opportunities for really moving the needle on diversity and inclusion. And finally, of course, to provide recommendations that will help inform the multi-year action plan for bias-neutral policing, the EDI strategy action plan, and provide the police service with the information they need to make decisions. Some of this I've talked about in terms of it being a comprehensive. It does have a broad scope, examining practices, policies, organizational culture. And so not only what's written down, but also how are those policies, how are those programs implemented day to day? How do people receive and experience those policies and programs? Okay. What's the culture of the organization? Luckily, the OPS has done a lot of work to date on this type of topic, on these issues. So we're going to take all of that as our starting point. There's no point in us reinventing the wheel and starting over with a blank piece of paper, but we'll be taking the gender audit, the traffic stop race data collection, the work done by Staff Sergeant Granger and her outreach liaison team and others, and that will be the foundation, really the starting point. We'll be engaging, as I said, internal and external contacts, and it will be ultimately and has to be action-oriented. Strength-based, because organizations and people change the best when they have the strengths and the things that they're doing well as the starting point. Okay? And so those really are the opportunities and the leverage points that we can use to then close the gaps that may be identified between how things are done today and the benchmarks. And throughout, there'll be regular reporting to this group, to the community, to the police service. It's not a, we go away and come back 6 months from now, and in between there's a black box, so we will be in regular contact. These are the 5 areas of focus that were identified, again, at the very outset of this process. So I hope this looks familiar. This is really a reminder. The 5 categories: leadership and governance, the representation of diversity, how diverse is the police service workforce, human resources, all those policies and programs that are in place, policies and procedures, those are the ones that are specifically focused on equity, diversity, and inclusion. And then service delivery, which includes deployment, community engagement, and partnerships. So that's my, what I meant by it's comprehensive. It touches on all of those aspects. It is quite a broad-based audit, I would say. And how we're going to do it, the work plan, to give you a sense of the timing here. And these arrows overlap because there are 3 main phases that start at a particular point in time, but it's not like they shut down. They will continue to a certain extent. So although there's a critical period of time, it's not as if, oh, we're not going to take any new insights after the end of August. I mean, that will continue as time goes on. So the first phase is a desktop review to review the existing documentation, the data from the PS census, consult with a few key contacts. That takes place over the course of the summer. Coming out of that will be an interim report and plans for the community input phase, which is then the next phase, runs from August to October. We'll be talking with the community development teams to get a sense of and get their input, obviously, to how best to do the community engagement and gain community input. There'll be 2 main methods there. One is face-to-face meetings, and the other is an online questionnaire. We have been told that, of course, there's a bit of a consultation fatigue, right? And the community groups are invited to a lot of meetings and asked for a lot of input. So to the extent that we possibly can, we're going to be leveraging their existing meetings and asking to be put on their agendas so that we're not adding an additional burden. The other thing that I think has come out from some of the previous consultation sessions that have been done with the community is their interest in being engaged and invited, not just for the consultation or the engagement, but also to shape how that happens. So rather than us just imposing, well, we're to your meeting and here's what we're going to do, we will be talking with them about how they want to be engaged, what would work best for that particular group. That will go August to October. Again, if there are meetings that only occur in November, then those will take place as well. But the outcome of that is, again, an interim check-in report and plans then for the next phase, which is dialogue internally with the police service staff. We're planning to do talk with at least 50 people internally, and, of course, put together a final report. which our target is to have that ready in January. So the summary of the expected outputs, what you'll have in your hand at the end of the day, consolidation of the previous findings, so that all of these pieces that I mentioned before, the gender audit, the outreach liaison team report, a number of these things will all be pulled together. You'll have a current state assessment in those 5 areas of focus and measured against benchmarks. Solution-focused engagement insights. So when we reach out and talk with members of the community, members of the Ottawa Police Service and others, the intent is to focus those discussions on now what? What does this look like? What would be most feasible? What would make the best difference? And then recommendations for actions. So with that, thank you. I'd be happy to take any question. Superintendent, Chief? Yes, shed some light on the situation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much, Doctor, for your presentation. So we do have questions. We start with Vice Chair Smallwood. Mr. Smallwood.
Thank you. You touched on the community outreach, and I just wondered if you could give a little bit more, like how will you determine how many groups you're going to speak to? I know the one thing we'd be concerned about is you go through this and at the end of it somebody come forward and say, well, they didn't ask us or they didn't speak to us. So I'd really like to know how you make sure you have a robust scan of community groups out there that we are very concerned that we do hear from. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we will be taking advice and guidance from the police service, certainly, about how best to reach out, who are the groups that we want to start with. I think our intent certainly is to be more inclusive than less so. And if people come forward, it'll be public enough, I believe, that if people come forward and say, oh, we'd really like to have our input and be able to talk with you, we'll find a way to meet with them. Beyond that, there will also be a questionnaire, as I said, a broad-based sort of public questionnaire so that individuals can respond if they want to. But I think...
But a lot of that work's already been done, right? OLT went out, we met a lot of groups. Lori and I personally have gone out, met tons of people, met lots of people, brought all their questions and concerns together. So they're going with a lot of this information. We've had public consultation, we've met with a lot of groups. So we've put it out there to become part of the process. We met with them, that's how we got Greybridge Malcolm. They were part of the process as well, right? So at the end of the day, could we have missed somebody? Probably, but we'll extend out as far as we can, right?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smallwood. Member Velikat.
Thank you for the presentation. I, too, am very curious about which groups you are going to be reaching out to. And so I'm wondering if there's a possibility that you could let us know who they are at some point. I also have another question about, you mentioned quickly, and I think I understood you correctly, that you were going to speak to internal groups as well. Can you describe who you're going to be speaking to and how are you going to proceed to speak with I'm assuming your police officers that you're going to be speaking to, with the internal group?
Yes.
Yes?
Mr. Chair, yes, it'll be a wide range internally. Typically, our process is to speak with maybe 3 or 4 categories of people. So senior leadership, certainly. People who are accountable and responsible for particular policies and programs, because we will have our document review, we'll have heard from other people, but it's important often for us to go and get their interpretation and their understanding. That's kind of a second category. A third category will be identified groups that already exist within the police services, so we'll meet with them. And then usually what we do is work very closely internally to identify a range of people. The intent is not to have like a statistically representative group. The intent is to get a cross-section and a representative representative range of perspectives. And again, I know there's been a lot of work done already, so we don't need to go over well-tilled ground, but understanding from individuals, okay, here's the policy, what does it look like in your perspective? What does it look like on the ground in your experience? And Superintendent?
And Lori and I also have a list of civilians and officers that have come forward that have actually want to be part of this process. So we do have a list, I think it's 10 or 12 that have already stepped up to become part of this process.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. I'm also wondering, could people participate anonymously?
So I've done other projects like this, and yes, they can. We would just need to know where they're from. Are they civilian? Are they sworn? That kind of thing. But yes, I have had the person put in front of me with just interview 1, interview 2. It can be done.
Great. I look forward to your first report. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Velker. Member Blaustein.
Thank you. That was very interesting. I also look forward to it. I'm just wondering, are you looking at diversity as it pertains strictly to recruitment? Or are you looking at career development opportunities and diversity in the service too? Just asking.
All of that and more.
Thank you very much. Any other question from my colleagues? As I hear you doing your presentation, I cannot help it but to, so we do have a review of the strategic plan of our service. And I see some of the works you're doing here. So how is going to fit in with our strategic plan, or at what stage will you'll fit it in with the strategic plan we have? Because the timing is not aligning, because you're talking about January, and if I look at Randy Marr, I think the strategic plan for the board is going to be.
Mr. Chair, I am part of the internal diversity team, so part of that linkage piece is ensured. I know it's always a challenge to kind of align the processes, but right from day one we've been working together, and we have we're looking at kind of September, early October, having that joint police services and police member planning day we typically do, and hopefully they will have a number of the observations that we can incorporate into that process.
And to the doctor. So are you looking also for a performance measurement, like how would we measure our success, and what's the baseline, since like what will be your baseline for the measuring?
There'll be I think a number of reference points or benchmarks. One around performance measurement. One is frankly, the process. How is performance measured? What things are taken into account? And that's really in that first category about governance and accountability. Mm-hmm. How is it carried out? And does it in fact reflect best practices in terms of measuring and monitoring commitment or progress in diversity? So that's one category. Then if you look at, for example, the census data, there'll be other marks and other indicators that we'll be able to report on that says, you know what, in terms of representation, here are the results for women, and here's maybe the benchmark or a couple of different benchmarks that you may want to strive toward. And those would be then factored into ongoing performance measurement that the police service might want to undertake.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that, because there is, I can just imagine, there is some best practice in other areas, so we can measure with that as well.
Yes, absolutely, and that's where we'll use the Global Diversity and Inclusion benchmarks, which had, I think, 266 benchmarks in 14 different categories and at 5 different levels, so that will be kind of the core of what we'll be assessing it against.
Well, on behalf of my colleague, the board, I'd like to thank you and thank you, Superintendent Riom, and all of you for getting us where we are today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, just hold on. Just Chris, hold on. Member Velikat just had a question.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Does this also include, you may have said it again, looking at other municipalities and what they're doing that we're not doing? So I'm thinking of Montreal, because we've often brought up the fact that Montreal has a higher percentage of women than we do. So I'm just wondering if that's part of the study as well.
So it's interesting you should say that, because earlier there was a conversation in the room around the work that's happening overseas in Scotland, and Australia is another place to look at. So there's policing organizations that have been doing a lot of work, and not only within Canada, and we did do this kind of research a few years ago. We need to go back again and see what's new. So yes.
Would that be it, Madam? Yeah, merci. Okay. Thank you very much. And on the report that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this presentation for information. Received? Thank you very much, folks. And now if you can go to item number 4, modernization of roadmap update and bundle 2A request. Yeah, it's just one slide we agree on.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. As a result of some of the work that we've been doing around the modernization roadmap and relying on our principles specifically, I can't get that word out tonight, specifically around the partnership first principle, we've been able to have meetings with the city so that we can start to align 2 of the projects that we presented to you at the Finance and Audit Committee last time. So in terms of the information system, the MIS, and the enterprise asset management projects within the overall program, we're going to split those 2 pieces off from the bundle that we presented to you initially, and we're going to look at going ahead with the other 5 areas of work and look for bundle funding around that. The early conversations that we've had with the city have allowed us to see there's both opportunity and limitations what we can achieve in those areas, and we need to make sure that we're properly aligned with them so that we can deliver under their systems. So in that, what we're going to do is we're going to come back to hopefully as early as July, potentially September, to look for enhanced funding in that bundle 2 to move ahead on those 2 projects. So what you have in front of you is a breakdown of the areas that we're asking to be funded around bundle 2A, and these are exactly the same areas that were presented at the last Finance and Audit Committee.
Okay. Jeremy? Well, first of all, thank you, Deborah and Deputy Chief. I think I had some concern at the Finance and Audit Committee, and I had asked the Director General, and I think I would assume yourself, met with staff, and I feel today comfortable with the fact some of those items that you called them in your own term is the back office items been at least been put on hold for the time being till the city became on board and be able to engage with us. If I understand, Deborah, staff from the city, they said they won't be able to do much right now until first quarter of 2019, if I remember correctly.
Mr. Chair, that's correct. In the back office area, we'll be working with the city to maximize the use of the their SAP systems. And at the moment, the city is investing quite heavily in upgrading them to something that's called the HANA version of SAP. And that will include some payroll upgrades. So we're making sure that that work has priority. What the city treasurer has assured us is that that work concludes in December 2018. So in January 2019, we have the ability to start to implement on city systems. What we're doing from now until the end of December then is reviewing the overlap of the opportunities that we have. We know that there's some systems that the city may want to work with us on to put into the cloud version of SAP, which is called SuccessFactors. But there are many aspects of the work we're doing in those two in those two work streams that we could utilize the existing city SAP version. So our two teams are meeting actually this week and next week to compare roadmaps. We each have a roadmap outlining our way forward, and we'll be looking to maximize overlap, but also some opportunities to merge into the new version of SAP. There's benefit for both of us to be able to test out some of the new aspects of the success factors and to do it on a limited basis. So it's we always keep in mind that there's only one taxpayer paying the bill for these functions, and we're trying to make sure we get maximum use out of our taxpayer dollar.
Mr. Chair, can I add as well that I've been having some discussions with Mr. Kanellakis to look at what other opportunities and where the city is heading and where are other opportunities that the police service can collaborate with the city, and we'll be bringing that to the team as well.
Okay, so I do have a few questions, but I'll take questions from my colleague first, and then I'll go to my question. So, any question from Member Smallwood? Anybody else?
Just a question I raised before at the meeting, and I just wondered, do you have any update on the idea you were talking about of being able to untether the officers so that they'll have more mobility? Do we have a time frame for when that might happen? And I think that's a really important part of this, to be able to get the officers to be able to be more mobile. So just wondering if you have any update on that.
So specific timelines of when we'll be deploying that I don't have for you right now. Do we have those?
No.
No, so I didn't think so. That's why I don't have them. So we don't have those specifically, but what we do have is we have charted out how we're going to bring our new laptop computers, our mobile data terminals into the cars, and then beyond that, how we're going to actually look to iteratively transition the officers to being able to use their handheld and have more functionality. So to take us completely away from the data terminals in the vehicles that we have now is a much longer term process, but it's something that we're looking to progressively do over the coming years.
Mr. Chair, if I can add as well, so that's, frontline mobility, that's part of Bundle 2, which you're approving tonight. That's where the money is moving towards advancing that part of our modernization roadmap. So there will be significant advances in this bundle towards achieving that objective.
So that means that in terms of the on-foot officers and the bicycle officers, it's not going to happen this year or next year even, maybe then? It's a couple of years away. Is that the idea?
So I believe it starts in 2019 and should be coming online as our bikes and beats unit are actually coming online. The mobile officers, the ones that aren't tethered to the cars, the officers walking the beat and riding the bicycles, we've actually identified as a very good test group to use some of these more innovative, more forward-looking technologies so that they aren't tied down to a workstation or to a vehicle. So we do see great opportunity in leveraging that group, and that's one area where we're focusing on piloting and implementing new technology.
Any other question from my? And I do appreciate the fact the majority of my colleagues were at the Finance and Audit Committee and they asked a question there. But some of the questions we had asked, and you were to give us a little bit more detail tonight at this meeting. Obviously, we want to support the Bundle 2A request because that falls under operation, and we don't want to delay. So the frontline mobility will include issuing smartphone to frontline members, right, Deborah? At the cost of the phone and the bandwidth included in the $1.74 million. My question is that price including the smartphone or not including the device itself?
Mr. Chair, that will include the cost of the device, and on the operating side, we'll be picking up the cost of the phone service itself. So yes, within that number then we want to achieve two things. We will be replacing the workstation, the mobile workstation in our patrol vehicles to bring it up to date, to become more powerful, and also to deal with the ergonomic issue of putting a workstation inside a vehicle. That's one aspect of the work. The second aspect of the work is to distribute mobile devices to frontline officers. At the moment, as they leave the car, they don't have access to CPIC or to CAD. They have CAD a bit through their radio, but they don't have RMS. So they don't have the ability as they work to understand what's going on around them or to research information about the location they're going to. Those are the features placing on the smartphone so that the frontline officer has almost as much information as they leave the car that they currently have when they're in the car. Those will be two aspects of that implementation. As the deputy pointed out, we'll start testing the mobile device with a team like Bikes and Beats because they're very mobile. It would need to be ruggedized given the kind of work that they do, and they are the kind of group that need information quickly because they're dealing with situations that are developing quickly. So we think there'll be a great group to test this out on. So you'll see two kinds of frontline mobility, all targeted at our frontline officers.
So did I hear you correct, Deborah, saying the access to information on a smartphone will be CPAC and other, and it's the same policy we have today in their system. Currently, the laptop will be the same policy transfer to the use of other technology. Am I correct?
That's correct. We operate our rules that govern our use of CPIC.
Yes.
That's the Canadian Police Information System. It's what police officers use to gain information about people and locations. We will observe all those rules. We do currently for desktop and for the vehicles. We have rules about how to access that information in the vehicles. Those rules will be transferred over to the mobile devices, and it mostly will govern what kind of factor, 2 to 3 factor identification is involved to access the information, as well about rules about the devices timing out so that they can't be used by others.
And if you can tell the board, Deborah, in terms of the money spent to date, what tangible benefit have been released? Because we spend on a bundle one, can you just tell the board and obviously the audience the tangible benefit to date?
Mr. Chair, I'll talk about a few of them, and then Steve, I think, could really fill us in on the innovation stream. We have spent, we're about 80% spent on the budget and about 70% of the way towards completion of the first bundle. You'll see from the first bundle budgets that the information management stream and the foundation and security stream were the lion's share, they're roughly half of the first bundle. Those are almost invisible to the user, but those are the backbone of both the information management and the technology platform itself. So what we are doing is a new security environment, which is critical for policing. We're creating a new technical backbone for Ottawa Police Service for all of these streams of work to operate on. And we're creating a new approach to information and how we access information. We know we have a lot of information with Police, but it's siloed within between 250 and 300 separate applications. So on the information management side, we'll be creating a data hub or a data lake in order that we can access that information across the organization with appropriate permissions. So much of the tangible work in that area would be invisible to the user. It's happening within the information technology group itself, but it's critical for moving forward. With the exception of the innovation stream, the other streams are following a design, plan, and implement approach. With member information system, enterprise asset management, frontline mobility, and collaboration, we've been planning and designing the applications that will follow. And implementation will happen in Bundle 2 for all of them, phased in many cases. So for each of those other streams of work, we have a plan for the features of those streams going forward. We've designed the implementation in accordance with the input from our internal clients, and we've often looked at, especially in member information system, the service delivery model that will in accordance with. So for member information systems, that means looking at how HR operates and the services HR offers to its clients and how we become more client focused. So there's the work that you'll see, the accomplishments in Bundle 1, with the exception of collaboration, innovation, I'll get Steve to talk about that, have been the completion of the plans and the design going forward that will be implemented in Bundle 2. That's what's helped us have the conversation with the city around member information system and enterprise asset management, is knowing what features we want to have, what applications we need in order to operate the way we want to operate. And we've been able to use that information then to map it against their offerings to see how close a match we can have. So it's critical, it's been critical planning and design work so that we can successfully implement in Bundle 2. Maybe Steve talk about innovation.
So our approach with innovation has been unique and somewhat different than we've done in the other areas. We've actually taken the COP-centric view to heart for sure. And what we've done is we've assembled a group of about 20 operational people who come in on twice a year now to have discussions to tell us about the things that they need to see from this modernization roadmap from a technology perspective to be able to help them drive operations. So in our first session, the group came up with 3 key things that they wanted to look at. One of them was called Zello. It's an app, and what it is it's a push-to-talk app that allows you to talk within smaller group settings, and that's being used by our covert ops group because some of the challenges we were having around their interoperability, carrying a clunky radio when you're doing foot surveillance is really challenging. When you can walk down the road with your cell phone, have it to your ear like everyone else does. So we've started testing on that, and we saw early on that it was very effective from an operational. Another area that we looked at was around social sentiment analysis and the effectiveness of it to help us drive operations. We know that from building a business plan, from building a strategic plan, social sentiment is a very helpful tool. But we were actually looking at, can it help us drive and direct our operations? Pretty early on, we actually brought in some people that had experience in jurisdictions doing it, specifically Baltimore. It was Baltimore. The chief of Baltimore came in, and he had widely used social sentiment analysis and developed it to help drive his ground level operations. We put this in front of the Innovation Council, and they quickly saw how it could actually be of benefit to help alleviate traffic complaints where there's multiple Twitter hits on a traffic complaint. It could help to measure community response to some sort of traumatic incident in their area so that we would know what areas to go to more quickly. So there's an area where we've actually found tangible benefits in using that. The last area that the Innovation Council looked at in the first iteration was around Health IM and how are we going to evaluate its effectiveness. Is it actually getting officers out of waiting rooms when they're transporting mental health patients? Is it achieving the goals that we wanted to have? And the Innovation Council determined that that was a good way to actually spend some of the innovation money that we'd set aside to make sure that we were actually achieving what we had hoped to achieve. In our last iteration, one of the things that came out of that was really interesting for us was around facial recognition. We have hundreds of photos a week that are provided to our mass, the mass of our officers saying, can you recognize this person? Can you recognize this person? 90% of the time, that person may have already been involved with us, and we already have a photo of that person. So if we could take out the opportunity cost that we're losing every time we put an email out to have people look at, and actually be able to run it through the data that we already have, we would be much farther ahead. So right now, we're looking at testing and trying to figure out how we're going to pilot facial recognition software within our service. The Innovation Council has actually been, it's been very productive. It's helped us from a change management perspective as well, because it's easy to say cop-centric, have to show that that's what you want to do. This group comes in on a regular basis. They're the ones that determine the direction we're going to take in terms of technology's investment to help operations. And if they don't go in a direction, we don't go in that direction. So it's really trying to demonstrate that the modern roadmap is there to support and augment operations from a technology perspective, and that the people on the ground doing the work actually have the answers for us, and we need to utilize them to help set our direction.
My final question is the PwC regularly travel from Toronto to Ottawa, and we saw it in the report, but now looking for purchasing office space. My question, what sort of work cannot be done remotely? Because if we go through the report, obviously the remote conference call through FaceTime and other. So I'm just wondering why do we need to rent a space? Just because that was in your report.
Mr. Chair, thank you. The PwC has been quick to point out to us that a police organization is a very unusual client. What they found with us compared to clients perhaps such as the big five banks is that the police officers want to be very involved in watching the work unfold and being involved in it side by side. So in our case, it's very much a show me, we're a climate. And the purpose of the space that we're talking about is to create the project environment as we launch these and implement these next bundles. Because our officers, as Steve said, the Innovation Council, they want to see how it works. They want to be involved in the development of it. That's how they establish their trust in it and can support it. So we maximizing teleconferencing and stuff as much as we can, but as it gets to actually implementing these packages, our folks have made it clear they want to be side by side and watch it happen. So we think that's one of the keys that we're to adoption and support of the program. We've been making do so far, but because as we had some space in Elgin before CID came back, we're actually starting those renovations now, so we're not able to use that space anymore. So we've looked for inexpensive space close by to create a project environment where our folks can be involved with the project teams themselves and really work as a coordinated team, not as the consultant and OPS. Steve?
Thank you very much, both of you, as well, for answering those critical questions. It's a large ticket item, and I'm sure you agree we need to work together with the city and with our staff to basically to get value for our money. And I would encourage you in the third report to don't wait too long to report back to us with the benefit of that investment, because it's a huge investment, to keep an eye on it, and also working with the city on the back office what they're doing for us at the same time. So I want to thank you both for being able to answer all our questions came in from the committee. You have a question now? Okay.
Thank you. I was wondering, this is pretty groundbreaking, right? I don't think there's any other police service in Canada that has what you're developing. And so you're talking about, you've brought in someone, the chief from Baltimore, for instance, because they have some of those applications. Where do you see this going for the rest of Canada? Do you think we're going to be attracting interest from other municipalities on how you're doing this?
I'll sort of speak from the strategy side, and Steve can cover the operational side. Yes, it is unique. When we started this work, we realized that in policing, there hasn't necessarily been a strategic approach, a roadmap to develop the information management and information technology approach. We found this ourselves, that policing to react immediately to a problem and to solve it, and that's created what we have now, which is many siloed applications. So what people across the country are telling us is that they're very interested to see how this works. They appreciate the investment the board has made to look at a 6-year plan and to invest as we go with an end in mind, and that's something that they want to see how this unfolds. Take it back to their boards. There's a commitment on the other side, which the board chair reminds me of. We agreed to deliver quite a significant package of benefits as well. So people are watching both sides. The delivery, the design delivery, implementation of the roadmap, plus the change in work, the transformation of work, and the benefits that go with that. Now that's kind of from the back office side, but Steve can speak more to operations. Yeah, from an operational perspective, there's been a lot of interest as well. But the other side of that is, I think you have to remember, policing's actually catching up. You get a business card at work, you take a picture of it, and it automatically downloads into your contacts. In a police environment, why don't we take a picture of a driver's license? Automatically downloads into a report so we can start to fill that report. The opportunities for us to actually make the work of our frontline members more streamlined is immense. People are very keen to see how we bring that together in a strategic way to be able to deliver this as we move ahead. The important piece of this, though, is it's not a technology project. We build it initially as the IT roadmap. It's not that, because if it was that, it would have a huge percentage chance of failure. But we're not approaching it that way. This is a people change project, and we're bringing technology in to help support our operations and working to teach and train our people how to use those to get the best out of their day as they move ahead. So we think there is lots of potential in this. We definitely know there's lots in this, and I think our approach is a little novel in this to make sure it's operation focused and focused on helping develop our people to move ahead.
Good. Thank you, Madame Velikat. So with that, folks, that the Ottawa Police Service Board 1 received the modernization roadmap update for information on the item 1 received. Item number 2, approve the work plan for bundle 2A as set in the report. Approve. Item number 3, approve the delegation of authority to the Chief of Police to execute and administrate Bundle 2A in accordance with the Master Contract Agreement to a maximum of $9.9 million. Approve. Item number 4 is the question asked last, is approve the 5-year lease commencing August 1st, 2018 with Metcalf Realty Company Limited for 3,034 square feet of space at 150 Isabella Street for an annual net rental amount of $27,306, an annual estimated operating cost of $48,600. All right. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you for answering all our questions. And please, like I said, early in the fall, or you can bring us some update to the Finance and Audit Committee. Thank you. With that, folks, I believe that will conclude our meeting in public, so I need a motion to move in camera. So move by Member Smallwood. Thank you very much. And happy Canada Day, everyone. And Chief, if you can pass on our gratitude to the 911 or the call center for 30 years anniversary. So on behalf of, and happy anniversary to all the people at those centers. I know they're frontline as well as anyone else, those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.